And
Mm.
so for people like me, well, you listening, what I have so much to say, but like I
Mhm.
remember reading that even with complete grass-fed, grass-finished animal, something from Western Canada can have a different nutrient profile, like
Mhm.
selenium, for instance, based on Eastern Canada. So it's like
Mhm.
that is how um precise, or I don't know what the word is, but where like why you would want to talk to your farmer and know about the plant health and the soil health and everything. And then the other thing is once you find the good stuff, like that's why I'm always like you are providing like your what you're doing is so valuable. Um because you don't need as much.
Mhm.
So for someone who is feeling overwhelmed with finding food, like once you get the really nourishing food, you
Right.
don't need
Right.
as can you speak at all about the like
Mhm.
I mean, I've started an entire company protecting those nutrients and how valuable they are and the lengths
Mhm.
that regenerative farmers are going through and actually the repair that it's doing. Like your mom told us that the root system at your ranch in Wisconsin has positively affected the Mississippi River so many miles away because of that
Mhm.
healthy root system of the native grasses. And
Mhm.
just about the how it's not I mean, it starts with nourishing yourself on a deep level, but then it's also affecting, all of us and our climate and all of that, and I know that
Yeah.
could take about
Yeah.
24 hours to talk about, but just,
Yeah.
like, really
Exactly. Yeah.
briefly.
So really quickly, yeah, fun story on that. I guess the runoff. We're not real scientific. We're very anecdotal, objective type people. Um, but it's the simplicity that I think helps you peel back the layers and not get confused. Um, you can argue all day long the science behind regenerative and that kind of stuff, but when we took over, when we purchased the home ranch in 1997, we started on a different place and outgrew that in 1994. Well, yeah, and then moved to the place that we're on now, or the home place, in 1997. And it was a conventional dairy, had conventional crops, and they just had the cows in the barn and a little pasture, and then everything else is crops. Um, and there was a ravine, a drainage system that ran through the farm, and we used to ride horse through the culvert that was that went under the road out of that ravine from the farm, from the home ranch. And Mario and I used to ride horse through there to be able to go over to the neighbor's house instead of walking and going across the road because it was a little bit busy. And it was a full 6 foot culvert. We just kind of lay down on the horse and walk right through, and it was fun. And we were kids, just doing dumb stuff like that. But the point is that it was really big. They just redid the intersection 5 years ago and did a runoff test, and they put a 36-inch culvert in because we had essentially zero runoff from the ranch. So that just speaks to the volume of water that is being soaked up like a sponge because of the root system, the living root, and all the thatch and the the what do you want to say? Just the structure of the soil that's able to absorb, to trap and absorb all that water, and all that water that's not leaving our place. It used to run off brown, going through that culvert. And now it's a clear stream, and it's tiny. 36 inches. They decided was more than enough. Um, that's cool, to be able to hear that kind of stuff. But it's not. We didn't set out for that. It's just like you just make the right decisions, and I think this applies to anything in life, whether it's ranching or your own health. Is just make the next right choice that day, and in over time you'll be surprised where you find yourself and what it affects. Right? Don't get too far down the road of mapping your health journey and over analyzing and saying, is this really worth it? All this effort, if it doesn't turn out, X, Y, and Z way, it's going to be all for naught. It's going to be wasted. I'm going to waste the money. I'm going to waste the time. I'm going to waste the energy, to waste the discipline, all the things. You're overthinking it. You need to have a little faith to start on the journey and say, okay, this is the next right step, the first right step. And um, so, yeah, I would just encourage people to make the next right step, whatever that is, in understanding their own health journey. That this stuff it's almost incomprehensible, but it's simple logic and it makes sense. And there's not a lot of science to support it because there's not a lot of um, it's such a small microcosm of agriculture and the food industry that there's almost no money in it. Also, which is challenging. Where the money is made is in big ag. It's unbelievable, almost unfathomable. How much money um, they make. Hence the reason that the most wealthy, or one of the wealthiest companies in the world, I believe Bayer, the pharmaceuticals, bought Monsanto and got into chemical ag production because it is
Mhm.
one of the most wealthy industries in the world. And dollars um, dollars buy a lot of marketing. Dollars buy very smart people to be able to market very creatively. And dollars feed families, and so they can justify a lot. Um, but it's not it's not feeding people well. It's not nourishing people, and I think we have a lack of understanding of what it actually. We're so disconnected from what it is, what it feels like to feel good. Like,
Mhm.
I think people are
Yes.
so um, mostly sick all the time that their justification line is so distant. They don't even know what it means to feel good. It just A lot of people think that feeling good means not feeling bad, and
Mhm.
that's a sad state for us to recognize. Where people are at. Um, there's a buddy at the gym that says all the time, "Healthy feels way better than any junk food I've ever tasted."
Mhm.
And he was vegan for a few years and was down to he's a little bitty guy, but he was down to like 95 pounds, convincing himself that he was feeling great, that he was doing all the right things. And eventually somebody said, like, man, kind of, what are you doing? Like, you're kind of wasting away. I think it was an aunt that made some little comment or something like that. It was supposed to be kind of cheeky, I think. Like, oh, you're such a cute little boy. And he's like, wait a minute, I'm a grown man, and I, like, out of the military, and not real tall, but just it was he was just a little stick. And he's like, that's not what I feel that I was meant to be. And so
Mhm.
he's actually become a customer of ours and just absolutely probably one of our number one fans now. But just absolutely loving, and he's put on a whole bunch of weight, and feels better than he ever has. And it's truly night and day when you experience it, um, and embrace the craziness of because of how different it is to eat, maybe animal based, or eat the way that the things that nature provides. Kind of, I'm on this journey of kind of thinking about a native diet. What pre-modern food industry, what would people eat? What was available? Um, and I don't believe that nature is incomplete. So everything that we need, and this is circling around to your point about the regional aspects of nutrient profiles and things like that in the soil, and what that ultimately means um, for the consumer. I think it is really important. We've gotten so far from um, so far from purchasing for nutrient value, and our whole entire food industry is set up on volume, right? So the farmer gets paid on volume. Doesn't Nutrient density has no bearing whatsoever on what he gets paid for his produce, or for his goods, and nor does the consumer. They're not paying for nutrient density. They're paying for volume. um,
Mhm.
and so that's a broken system. and just recognizing that and thinking, okay, so how can I be a more conscious consumer and a better steward of my dollars if I'm buying value and not volume? So nutrient value is going back to eating, what you had just mentioned there about you can consume less because it's more nutrient dense. You don't need to consume as many calories because the nutrient density of what you are eating is satisfying and it is everything that you would need. And this is, I think, eating internationally um, is we don't understand it yet. I don't think there's anybody doing any studies on nutrient, profile or what the body truly needs. And I think we're so far from even understanding how this impacts. But really, if you bring your food network into a more localized setting, with this understanding or this thought process that okay, so everything that I need is within reach, essentially, right? Like there's nothing that's nature is not incomplete unless man makes it incomplete and breaks the cycle, breaks the system to try to go bigger, faster, stronger. Um, but if we can understand that and embrace that, and you start to look at okay, so what's available, there's, I guess, in Wisconsin, you have blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, some really strong powerful antioxidant fruits, some strawberries occasionally just for a short season, but everything's in a seasonal cycle, and you can dry some fruits and things like that, but remove the refrigerator and the freezer and refrigeration delivery from the system, and okay, you'd have raw milk, you would have a cow that, because it would spoil before, um, you'd have to eat it or drink it or consume it really quickly. You have, preservation methods of sour cream, cottage cheese, yogurt, kefir, some of those types of things that are really natural um, preservation methods, I guess, old world preservation methods. But and then meat, right? So you'd have some fruit, occasional, and if you didn't have a sophisticated garden, and even the sophisticated gardens of old had um, much more. What do you want to say? Just like native species within, and the way that they were grown was just old world grains and old world, um, root vegetables and things like that that were relatively simple today. And we have all this exotic stuff in our gardens, and it takes so much effort and um, so much resource, to be able to support it. And it just makes me wonder, okay, so we're spending all this effort. We only have so much energy, right? Everything takes energy to produce and to create. And why not tap into the natural cycle? This is where regenerative comes in too with raising animals. What if, the craziest concept, what if, your garden just did it on its own? What if your animals just had babies and made meat on their own? And what if your dairy cow just, um, made milk on its own? And all those things do happen. And if we just align ourselves with how nature is producing, ironically, it turns out that we are actually healthier and it's providing all the nutrients in the seasons that we need them. Nothing more, nothing less. But um, we overcomplicate it, right? So if you deduce it down to just a really simplified version of how you think to consume, I think meals get a lot simpler, but also so much more nourishing and so much more um, right and enjoyable. I don't know. It just feels right, and it feels to eat well. It just feels it just feels so good. I don't know how to say that. I guess going back to my own journey here, 6 months ago, I decided to go really almost all in on the animal based aspect and really kind of test it for myself. And I like to work out and lift, and I've always been kind of athletic in sports and things like that, and interested. And but my body composition didn't necessarily reflect that. And so about 5 years ago, I got into lifting a little bit more, and for the first 4.5 years, yeah, I felt good or felt better, and um, physically, it looked decent. I was healthy, I would say, relative to what I had. Um, Relative to, I don't know what I'm even stumbling over to say what to relative. Am I comparing myself to other people? I guess so. But in the last 6 months, so 6 months ago, I decided to change my diet and go to this, really um, holistic lifestyle of animal based, and really practicing what I'm preaching because being, and this is the blog that I'm just working on right now, but um, thinking about, okay, so I'm a product of the 80s, and I didn't think, that greens were necessarily good or bad, but that was kind of, greens, fats are bad and greens are good. That was the message of the 80s, and I, being, what we do, I knew balance was good, right? And so, but I didn't fully understand it, and I didn't really have a personal impact on my life. Um, and so now I've really shifted over to this more native diet, animal based eating, and I have seen more mental, physical um, transformation in the last 6 months than I did in the first 4.5 years of lifting. It has changed drastically, and to the point where people at the gym are constantly coming up to me asking what I'm what I'm taking. Right? They're assuming it's some form of steroids that I decided to get
Oh
on.
my
And there's a lot of
god.
people at the gym that are taking steroids that it's just what everybody does. I'm shocked. So a little bit of background too with my mom and dad. They were kind of to come full circle. That's the scene that they grew up in, and kind of how they started interested or getting into the how Northstar was born. I should say my dad competed at a high level in powerlifting and started the American Drug Free Powerlifting Association with a few friends because of his disdain for drugs. Ended up setting an American record in the deadlift, and so he was highly competitive. But it was, his training, genetics. You can't change what your training and your diet. You could, and he did everything he could, to make sure that his diet and his training were on point, and ended up, doing some really amazing things. But it was out of his distaste for people that he was competing against. He didn't realize he was just a naive farm kid, and he'd go to these competitions and just get blown away. He's like, my gosh, I don't know how I could train any harder. These guys are just destroying me. And then, somebody said, well, what are you using? Like, whatever you're using is the wrong thing. Like, what do you mean, what am I using? Like, well, if you're, and they said, I'm not using anything. That's stupid. And they said, well, if you're not man enough to take the drugs, then you got to get out of the sport. And he's like,
Okay.
oh, really? Okay. Now them's fighting words. So so then he set out, on a mission basically to level the playing field and distinguish. And this is where the distinguish, or the, doing the right things just doesn't necessarily pursue you. North Star started out grass fed in regenerative model, not for the end purpose of grass fed regenerative model. It was just, okay, we have bison. How are they going to live? They should live like they used to live, right? In every way possible. So by default, that's 100% grass fed regenerative.
Mhm.
Um, the human body we should not be considering, okay, so, how should the human body function? Not with HGH and steroids and, all this other stuff that we're injecting into our bodies to be able to, compete at a higher level. That's like outside the boundaries of what's good for us, right? So that was kind of the distinction then in the lifting world that my dad had made. But it's just a constant, the common thread, I should say, is just making the right decision in the moment about, okay, what's best for me, what's best for the animal, what's best for the land, and you just find yourself in a place that's deeply nourishing.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. That is so inspiring, and, Behzad and I are gonna cheer you on for your
Yeah,
natural lifting powered by
sure.
bison.
Yeah, so that's literally my dad. The light bulb moment for North Star was, my mom is a dietitian, um, and had done a lot in the supplements category, and that's kind of a funny story now too, I guess, 30 years later. But she said, she's a marketer, and she said, okay, so, but also my dad had this hobby that was kind of getting out of control just a little bit because he just loved his bison. He just kept having more and more, and my mom was like, well, this has got to pay for itself somehow. So from that question, they started looking into it just a little bit more. What opportunities are out there for bison? And this is early 90s, and not a lot of information was available, but they did find that bison was nutrient dense in a way that was different than other red meats. Um, and they likened it a little bit more to chicken. And in all my training days, my dad couldn't eat red meat because it was taboo. It was, bad fats, and red meat is, will die of heart disease. And so all he ate was chicken. And he said, well, you can only eat so much chicken in your life. Like, there's a lot of lifters out there that need this bison meat, aka red meat chicken. And that was kind of the catalyst that said, okay, let's try this. I think there's a whole lot of people in the world that need good red meat in their life that don't even realize they can eat red meat. And so, yeah, they had made some connections with some cardiologists, and that were looking for, you know, a good um, a good protein to be able to turn some of their patients onto that were dealing with some health complications, and things have just been growing ever since. But now, coming full circle too, with my mom's occupation of, selling supplements, and kind of the traditional sports arena of protein powders and things like that. I don't want to pick too big of a fight here, but we're kind of on a mission to put those industries, um, not out of business, but just like, that's old news. You can actually incorporate, and we're trying to formulate products now with our various blends. Our old world blend being like our multivitamin, so to speak. Like, this is your everyday, full. It's a whole animal eating experience. And there's also some other blends that we're coming out with, now as well, and formulating, and have launched, that are a little bit more specific, to different needs, that people might have, whether they're recovering, or dealing with some really serious health issues. So it's got a little higher heart and liver content in it. But so, trying to, formulate supplements, but then also, um, just completing, people's nutrient profile, that they don't need supplements anymore. They don't need vitamins and pills and things like that, because they have a complete diet, and you can put your money into things that are significantly more natural and bioavailable than, um, vitamin C tablets and things like that, that are overly processed, and really expensive. So,
It totally, and that is what Bezat and I experienced. We were waiting so excitedly for the Old World blend to become available, and we ate it right away, and literally our bodies were craving, like, we have to have more of this, and I would say that even it's been out for, like, 6 months, maybe
yep,
longer, 7 months.
yep. I think it was late July, early August that we
Yeah,
launched it. Yeah, so a
yeah,
little more than 6 months. Yeah.
that, I still have craving, like, I mean, we can just eat now we're preparing 2 packages at a time because
Yep.
we get through the first one and our bodies literally are craving it, and we have an impeccable diet, like,
Yeah.
and that was the only thing that changed, and I had all these little hairs that were popping out, and it was the only thing that had changed in my diet, so it's just
Yeah.
it is
Wow. That is such a. I mean, that little testimony right there just goes to show,
yes,
like, you don't understand the. You see it in nature. You have like a mobile. There's a holistic um, diagram, I guess, that shows that it has like a mobile with all these different arms and all these different things dangling off it, just balancing. And the instructor will say, he'll tap uh, one of those elements on that mobile, and the whole entire thing shakes. And some of them get wrapped around each other. And he said, you can't touch something over here and not have it affect the whole.
yeah,
You can't change your diet and not have it affect your hairline.
mhm,
It's your body wants to be whole and healthy. Just give it a chance, and understanding, what are those triggers. And that's the difficult part, is what is deeply nourishing. It's so confusing today with all the different marketing and all the different stuff. Of going back to the beginning of the podcast, when you asked about, how do people walk through the grocery store and choose what to buy, because everything has a health claim on it, right?
mhm,
um, but that's not, I think, it's really difficult to undo your mind from pursuing the different health claims, and pursuing whole food ingredients. Just get a potato and some meat. Get some carrots and some meat, or some whatever it may be, bone broth, or don't eat, don't grab a protein bar that has 19 different ingredients and claims this and this.
Mhm.
That's overly processed and not bioavailable. Um, so just eating whole foods and simple foods, and let your body tell you if it's working or not, because that's the ultimate test, right? You can't fool your body, and it will respond in a way that probably is going to shock you, as it has for me. Even at 36 years old, I didn't, I'm in better shape now than I've ever even dreamed I probably would be in my life, because of living 35 years of my life and saying, well, this is the way it's been, and my 20s were my prime, and um, that was bogus. My diet was my body was a reflection of my diet, really, and I didn't recognize that to the degree that I do now. And so there's deeply held beliefs, I think, that we have, that are laws, of diet, that we don't even recognize shape, the way that we make subconscious food decisions. So it's really, really hard to break out of that mold and have the faith to step out and eat something so crazy as an old world blend, and eat a pound of it at a time. I
Mhm.
just, I typically make literally a 1 pound burger
Mhm.
and drizzle some bone broth over it, and a little bit of, maybe some sauteed onions and mushrooms on it. And my goodness, that's a good meal.
Oh my gosh. Woo! I know. We just had it yesterday, and we could eat it every day. I can't wait till,
Mhm.
my body registers. You did it. You've, fulfilled this now.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And what, going back to like the vitamin C thing too, it's amazing. You start looking at, you know, um, the regeneratively raised organs and the nutrient profile that comes with those organs. You start checking off all these supplements and these vitamins that people are taking because there's missing elements. Well, it's not missing in nature. We're just producing it wrong, right? We're eating, and we're by, bypassing. We're producing for volume, and we're fast tracking right past
Mhm.
slow, nourishing food. And if we just slow down a little bit and eat, slow, nourishing food, it's amazing all these other symptoms and all these other things that we can leave behind, that are highly lucrative industries, but they drain our health and they drain our bank account, unfortunately.
So, that is, um, where I also, like, encourage you. This is so inspiring, but I encourage you to go to Northstar Bison, sign up for the email list. Any just like Toxie Free, anything you purchase at Northstar Bison comes with a guarantee, like, health. Like, it's just like it's all built
Hmm.
into the products. But get on Sean's email list, because that I tell people all the time, like, I learned so much from it, and really, like, you are, like, a w in such a small percentage of what you're doing for all of our nutrition, but you're a really good writer, and it is like
Thank you.
you're
I have zero training. It's just all passion for trying to
yes,
trying to help people, right, and write it in a way
yes.
that's interesting enough that they can enjoy what they read.
Yes,
So
and so,
thank you.
that is such a resource, like, anything, with the North Star Bison is going to enhance your life, and so I really recommend and following you on social media, telling other people, "What else can we do as a consumer to help support you?" Because like, it's so rare and what you're doing, and we wanna support you and make sure that because
Mhm.
I know you're not making tons of money like the other people
Yeah,
in the industry,
yeah,
so how can we
yeah. That's not the
support you?
Yeah, that's not our goal. Like I said just before we got on the podcast here, money is oxygen for us to be able to do more of what our ultimate mission is, right? We're not chasing dollars, but dollars are the fuel, that the world runs by, and so it's necessary. Um, but how can you help us? Yeah, honestly, just I think educating yourself, and really embracing what we talked about a little bit here on the podcast. And there's so much more. There's so much more to learn and to really expand your mind and challenge some of your own paradigms. Think about things differently. Think about the world around you differently, and the way that you eat and the way you interact with people. Um, and once you start down that journey a little bit more, you can't help but share it with other people. And I think that's the ultimate thing, is asking the right questions of yourself, and then helping other people once you get a little bit down that journey, because you can't lead unless you've been there. So leading people, helping other people along in that journey. And there's other brands out there. I'm not going to say, I mean, Northstar, we're so passionate about producing, the way that we don't cut a corner anywhere in the process. We start from, okay, what's the right decision here, and you just keep making right decisions all the way until you get to the end, to the consumer's door. And then we say, okay, so what does that cost? Okay, so that's the price. And it's not, we don't have a box, like I said, that we fit in that says, okay, this is the price, this is the ideal. No, we're going to produce something as efficiently as possible. We're vertically integrated to where we don't have middlemen and all this kind of stuff. We're trying to shave expense all through the process, and control. It's two different aspects there, that we're trying to that are beneficial. And so, yeah, we definitely want consumers to be blessed, to be deeply nourished by our products, and then to tell other people too, because ultimately, yeah, it is changing lives, and that's what we're here for. And we do want to have a conversation with you. We do, call, email, ask the questions. Like Laura said in the beginning, ask all the hard questions. We love discerning conscious consumers that are asking hard questions, because we know, like, those are the ones that get us so excited to answer and say that you found what you're looking for.
Mhm.
Like, we have a humble confidence, I guess, and it's one of our core values, is humble confidence. Like, know your stuff, but not boastful. We're helpful in a way that, we don't. There's not too many things that stump us, or um, that we're not, where there's nothing. We don't have things to hide. We have an open gate policy. That's kind of our. We're not certified organic. We have an open gate policy where we just say, come, Laura comes out to the ranch, and we don't do anything special that day. It's just another day in the life of the ranch. But you get to see it all, and it's inspiring. Like, we have tours, people that come out and say, I had no idea. I thought this was just going to be coming and seeing some bison, and I've almost left in a way that changes my life. And I think that's the way it needs to be, right? That's the way it should be, if you're doing things right, not because of being right, but because of um, just being a steward, and a grateful steward of the resources that you have influence over.
So, thank you so much. What
Hmm.
you've just heard from Sean is my exact experience anytime I've come into contact with anyone from your family, and even the people who work at your company. You just have you just displayed it perfectly, and it's like you are the roots of your native plants in your soil. Like, what you just displayed was exactly, it was like hearing your mom from that very first call all those years ago.
Sure.
So thank you so much for being
Yeah.
here, and I can't wait till the next time we get together and do this again.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, seriously, so much to talk about, and it's just enjoyable to hang out with you guys.